Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining. Maybe we started it around beginning of Jan, I guess, or sometime around mid of Jan, maybe when we started our journey, and maybe we covered, let's just say, read only the transactional capability of RAP application. We understood what is RAP in nutshell and how it can be consumed and what all artifact it does have, right? So, as a part of yesterday's session, what we did is something that we are going to talk about right now, and post which will also give some time in case you guys do have any questions. Okay. So, as a part of last session, what we understood is that when we talk about any sort of a rep API, we understood that it revolves around so-called BO node. Okay. We also understood that it revolves around so-called resources. And resources has by default, or I can say by nature of REST API, default operation supported, which is nothing but your create, read, update, delete, and query. But many a time what happens is you would need certain operations to be performed, which are not quite straightforward. Okay. There can be multiple operations involved within it. And you would like to give some sort of a abstraction to the things which are going into the background. Okay. And that's where what would help you is so-called custom operations, okay, which are supported in REST API, so-called actions or function. Okay, so what we understood is like we have in gateway, so-called function imports, right? Same way here in RAP as well, we can have function import. This function import can be of two type, um, of type get. The purpose of it will be to get some sort of a data. Now it may or may not be dependent on the instance of the record on which you are trying to process it. So for example, this function over here has been defined with the keyword function. It means it's dependent on the current record of the current instance record on which it is being processed. It also indicates one thing, that in case you would like to call this function, you have to pass the key parameter of at least one of the record for which you would like this operation to be performed. But in case there are certain things which are not on to the record level, rather it's on a global level. Now it may or may not be dependent on application data, or it might also be dependent on some sort of a customizing information you would like to read. In such a case, you can go with a static function. Okay. Each function gives you a capability of explicit parameter and result specification. Okay. Now this parameter can be a abstract entity. Okay. And this particular abstract entity that will be there here, you can specify the input parameters that you would like to have passed, and the one which you will be using going forward, going forward the moment this function is invoked. As a part of a result, you can also have some set of let's just a skeleton that you might opt to define. At the same point in time, in case you would like to return the current instance of a record, you can also do that. Okay. Um, these are the get operation. So idea over here is certain get operation will be performed, certain data will be read from the let's just say system by means of some sort of a select query or some function module, some API calls, and you will ultimately return that. When it comes to when it comes to performing something by means of which you would like to update the DB with some sort of a extra information, or you would like to modify certain information, then we can use the action. Now the action over here is also a kind of a function import, which with the HTTP type called post. If it's dependent on the instance of a data, we call it as an instance action. If it's not dependent on the instance of a data, we can call it as a static action. Okay. And there is one more type of action available. Unlike in function, we don't have this category. It's called factory action. So if the the outcome of any of the action is going to generate one new instance of a record, right? So for example, if I have a travel, I am trying to copy it. So logically within this function import, within this action of what I might be doing is I might be reading the old data based on the input parameter which I get. On top of it, we will also uh, let's just say clone it and create a new entry of a record by means of anything, by means of, let's just say, any of the business criteria that we do have. But at end of the day, if the place, or I can say the time when this method, or I can say this action execution started, if my system had 100 records, at the end of this action, my system will have 101 record. Okay, as good as that. So if there is some factory action, the purpose of it will be to generate a new set of record of the same type onto the entity on which it has been defined. This is called factory action. Now here we don't have a result parameter, because the result parameter of factory action will always be the current entity type, because the expectation will be that you are trying to generate a new record altogether. Okay. Now when it comes to implementation side of it, let's just say I'll go over here. Okay, so for example, this get travel purpose. Let's just go to the definition of it. Here you will see that we have for read whenever we have a get functions, but whenever we have a action, it says for modify, right? Because the purpose of it is to modify something onto the DB layer. I'll just go over here, and here you will see I am trying to read some data, and ultimately I am trying to respond back into the result structure of this particular method. The moment I do that, my system will ultimately send it into the response. These are the get function. Now the source of it can be a draft set of a data by read by means of a draft read EML, or it can be an active set of a data, totally depending on your business requirement. In case I am using some action, the post function import, then what you might expect is that there should be some sort of a DB update which might be going on. Here you will also get the key parameter into the input, and you can choose whether you would like to read the data in order for you to take some action, or if there is some situation like I do have over here, that I can simply go ahead and update the new status with the one which I just received. Okay, and ultimately the moment this has been updated, we'll try to send back the result. And in this result, the bare minimum thing that will pass is the key parameter, so that my system knows that, okay, there is a new record, or let's just say updated record. So system will try to trigger a get call, and we'll get the updated record, which will start reflecting on UI. Other than that, what we also understood is that action and function, on top of the action and function, we also have some behavioral aspects onto the screen. So for example, earlier, the fields were statically, the behavior of fields were statically defined. For example, if I would like some field to be, let's just say, in a read-only update mode, some read-only mode, whether I would like to have some fields as a mandatory. At the same point in time, certain actions were also given by default. But depending on the kind of data that we are working on, we could also opt for a case where if I say that this update should not be allowed if a record has been approved, if a delete should not be allowed if the record is in so and so status, and I should, and if I'm also interested in applying such a, let's just say, logic on my set of field level, or let's just say the action also that we define, then we can have a feature instance, or I can say dynamic feature control. That's what we can call it as. Dynamic feature control is applicable for standard actions, for let's just say fields that are part of the entity, or even the custom actions also that we define to choose to whom, or I can say based on which, just say which record should be processed, or I can say should be allowed to process. Okay, so for example, if I just go over here, we have a get instance feature. So the idea over here was that we'll read the key parameter, and at the same point in time in the result, we'll always get the things which we decided to have a feature in, let's just say, dynamic feature capability. So for example, update and delete, we choose to have a dynamic feature capability. Same goes with the action, certain fields. So as you can see here, the only field that we choose to have a dynamic feature capability are visible, and not all of them. Okay, and that's how we rate the data based on the draft. And finally, we are deciding that whether for this particular set of data, I would like certain operation to be enabled or disabled. For that, we are using a global constant interface. In this FC, we'll see O for operations, and maybe F somewhere we use, yeah, over here for the field, which ideally gives you a constant possible values that you can assign finally, and that will be assigned into the result parameter. So these are the things that we understood in the last session. So now, as a part of today's session, what we are going to do is the one thing. Mostly, it's onto the application side. We have created an application the moment we started, let's just say, rep service development. We'll see how the deployment can work. And in order for us to have a right flashback, we'll try to consume the service again, and maybe we'll go to the last step to understand how the application can be deployed, can be made available in BTP, and finally, in case some on some launchpad services, if you would like to have it visible, how that can also be done. Anyone has any doubts on any of the things covered so far? Anything starting from the day one till here? Yeah, Kansh.
Mm, One question, Sumit, like regarding to what we just recapped. What was the example or the business case for the static action? Like
So,
what would be a case, like an example?
so static action mainly you will go with if okay, I'll tell you what. So, for example, here uh, I would like to have a action. For example, approve travel, right? Likewise, for example, I'm creating an action using which I can let's just say copy. So these two actions are currently defined on a particular record, and it's also updating or creating the record on the same set of a node. So for example, it's doing something onto the travel node. Many a time it might also happen that I'm on a travel. I would like to click a create button, and I would like to create a child record out of it, which is, for example, a booking should be created with some sort of a default data. So in that case, even though I'm defining an action over here, my expectation will be that a child record should get created. In that case, many a time you might go with a static action, and in this static action, you will pass the parameter of your parent key, and outcome of it will be nothing but a current record. Sorry, not the current record, but the association that you will have over here, right? Like this one. So for example, if I would like to give, like, okay, the name also we mentioned onto the same line, static action booking. And here, as a part of the result, what you will define is I would like to have one booking created.
Okay, okay. So, but I could also do this with instance action, right?
You can do that with the instance action if you would like to. Let's just say the moment you say instance action, you can definitely do that. Um, but what happens is the moment you define an instance action over here, right? What you also did additionally is you define a metadata extension on the metadata extension UI.line item annotation where you bound the action. The moment you do that, ideally your action will start appearing onto the current node of the current representation of the node, which is on the list report. Now, logically, if I am creating some sort of a child item record, my expectation will be that it should appear onto the item level likewise. So in that particular case, what I might also opt for is I might opt for a custom invocation of that particular action. So in that case, it makes sense if I have a static action and I'll define that static action and invoke it only via the UI controller. Then in that case, the static action will be helpful. Now, it's not definitely hard and fast that you should only go with static action in that case, because you can also achieve the same thing via the action, I can say instance action for sure, or even via the factory action also defined on a relevant node. Because in the factory action as well, you will get the current instance of this particular record, and you can do that. But it's also violation. Factory action might not be a right fit, but these two actions can definitely help over there. But the only logical issue over there will be that you won't be able to plug that action onto the UI via the annotation. Rather, you have to go via the let's just say UI controller code to have that action appearing. At
Okay.
the same point in time, for example, if I say one more use case of static action, not for
Mhm.
creation of a booking, but let's just say I would like to perform something saying I would like to mark all the travel as obsolete if let's just say the status is open for let's just say more than 30 days, right? So in that case, it's
Hmm.
not dependent on individual travel. Rather, I'm trying to update something on mass level, isn't it?
Hmm.
Then in that case, it should not get the instance of a particular record, but rather it should
Right.
know that okay, I'm trying to perform this operation on a travel node, and my logic within it will say that okay, close all the obsolete travel, and I'll update the travel in mass. So modify EML will be there, which is not dependent on the travel. So that may be one of the
Right.
example that you might, right? So
Right. Right.
anywhere
Right. No.
where it's
Yeah. This makes. more sense
Yeah,
because like we're not doing some operation on that specific node and we want to
exactly.
do
Yeah.
some mass kind of operation, then that it will make sense to do this static thing here. Right. Got it.
And
Okay.
in case you would like to get some, let's just say, input parameter, in case wherever operation is being performed, because the same action might be used for multiple purpose, you can also have some parameter, because parameter and result structure are anyway given in case of static action as well. So that
Mm.
might also help.
Okay. I also have one more thing to ask. I think I would have asked yesterday, but maybe it's still not 100% clear to me. It was regarding the get of thing. So in the get, let's say I have like depending upon one of the field of my node, right? I want to retrieve something which is not
Mm-hmm.
the part of my
Key
like our
parameter.
table, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
table. Okay, fine.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it is like something external information, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I retrieve that and I want to display that on the screen like somewhere. But in order to
Mm-hmm.
have that field on the screen, I need to have it on the table in case of the managed application, right?
Not really. No.
Is that the right one? Oh,
No,
okay,
no, 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 no.
okay.
Because if we would like to get something on the screen via the get call, and if the bare minimum requirement is to have it within the entity, then we would even not create the function, right? I can simply trigger a get call with the dollar select and the property, isn't it? Are you getting my point?
Hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for example,
Yeah.
in the read call, we have a get. Let's just say get call will always have the entity name. And here, if I would like to get, let's just say, for my current record, for example, for some travel ID equal to 2, I would like to get some single property, which is question mark dollar select equal to, for example, a description. I could have done this, right? So the function that we define, we could also have achieved this via this get call, isn't it? And as I am asking my UI to
Right.
invoke that relevant call, my UI could have also invoked the o model.read, and they could have ultimately get this data. But many a time, like the scenario which you also stated is a correct one, saying it's not directly dependent on travel, or I can say it's dependent on travel, but it's not directly exposed by the means of entity. So what you will do is based on a travel, for example, travel will have some currency, and based on that currency, you would like to get, let's just say, some sort of a decimal point saying for this currency how many decimal points are allowed, and that particular decimal points are maintained in the some sort of a customizing, or let's just say somewhere wherever you would be maintaining it, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
directly exposed as a part of the entity, then also you can go with function. That's the right use case of the function, I can say.
Okay. No, yeah, so we can write the logic to retrieve that is a function, but having it like whatever, let's say whatever we retrieve, we want to
Mhm.
show that on the screen on the UI as well,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, you can do
So
that, right? So
showing
the
that.
idea is, as I mentioned first, right, saying when you go with a get function, okay, when you go with an action, there are annotations which can help you to some extent to have that action being performed. But when you go with function,
Mhm,
I also
mhm,
shown you how you can trigger this function via a browser, or let's just say Postman kind of a thing. But I never shown you how in a
mhm,
application you can integrate it, because in order for you to integrate it with the let's just say application, you might need some sort of a way to invoke this function, and that can only be done via the controller on UI, right?
okay.
So if it's
Yeah.
controller on UI, definitely this controller on UI will call, let's just say, or model dot call function, and this call function you will ultimately pass the relevant function. Let's just say uh, get random data, and this particular random data you might pass the input that you would like to have, and finally the response of it will be something that your function will respond with on this particular one. So because this call function will also have some sort of let's just say a response and let's just say error. So within this response, whatever response that the system will respond with, and I can say the JavaScript will get, right. Think about a scenario where I have the same thing in a app where I'm calling a function. I'm getting the same thing, but
Mm-hmm,
where I'm capturing it into a variable. I can say local variable. Same way,
mm-hmm,
when your function is being invoked, your response over here is finally being captured in some sort of a JS variable, right? Now my UI developer has the capability, or I can say has got the controls on the UI
mm-hmm,
side, saying the moment they
Uh-huh.
do have the data in JS variable, they can decide whether I would like to show it in the pop-up, or let's just say I would like to show it as a message, or let's just say if there is some more process which is going on and I would like to use this intermediate data that you just passed for some other operation which is being also performed. So there is a kind of intermediate data that you are responding with. Now it won't be visible onto the UI in the same state. Rather, your UI developer, or let's just say UI controller logic, can very well alter it to prepare it in the form the way you decided to show it onto the UI. Getting my point? Because
Okay.
it's just a set of variable that you are helping the UI to populate, because that's something which might be used to show something on UI or some processing logic, or it could be anything depending on your business requirement. Understood?
Right. Okay. No, the only doubt I had that okay, so if my requirement is not just to show this temporary like value in like a pop-up or anything, but like along with the other fields which are already there in the entity, if I have
Uh-huh.
if I have to display anywhere in the UI where already like a travel node itself, right? Like the rest of the
So you would like to
fields that
go
you have
with
done.
a DB. Okay, you would like to go with a scenario where you have a table which has column one,
Uh-huh.
column two, and this
Uh-huh.
column one is coming from an entity, for example, travel entity column one, travel entity column two,
Okay.
and the column three data that you are willing to display is not something which is directly stored onto the entity. That's what you are saying.
Right, right, right.
Right. So in that case, you can go with something. It's part of our when we have this ABAP on HANA, right? So there is a basics of CDS. There is something called virtual field. Now this virtual field helps you. This is on the CDS layer. Okay, maybe it exists, or I can say it was there even with the, before RAP exists. Okay. So this virtual
Uh-huh.
field will help you define a field. For example, random field uh, X, for example, and the type of it. For example, I'll say ABAP char 30. And this ABAP 30 will ultimately be bound with one more thing on top of it, so that this logic, or I can say this, can get calculated, which is nothing but your at the rate. Oh, my bad. Here you will ultimately have object model. Uh, and this object model will have ultimately a way using which you can a virtual element class. You can specify a virtual element class. That's what ideally it's called it as. There is some word object model dot some sort of a class is there. You can specify a
Mm-hmm.
BAP, and here
Okay.
you can specify a class, for example, ZCL XYZ. And this XYZ
Mm-hmm.
method, XYZ will have a method internally called calculate. This calculate method
Mm-hmm.
will ultimately help you calculating what should be the value of this. In that case, you are also not supposed to go with a function, because what you want is, along with the get call that gets triggered and that gets my, let's just say, three columns, T1, T2, and T3. This T1 and T2 should be derived directly from the database, but the T3 column over here is something that I would like to have a chance, or let's just say I'll need some place where I can derive what is the value that's going to flow into that particular field.
Mm-hmm.
Then in that case, you
Mm-hmm.
will have two fields over here which are directly part of your table, but the third field won't be part of your table. Rather, you will have some placeholder
Mm-hmm.
on ABAP where you can write the logic to calculate the value and finally send it back
Right.
in the same get call. It won't be a separate get call, rather it will be the same, and you won't even don't need the function for that.
Mm.
Okay.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So I guess, yeah, it was a good discussion. Anyone else has any doubt? Yeah, I can see if you also have some doubt. I mean, I'm I'm not saying maybe you cannot ask. You can also ask in case you have any doubts. Okay, seems we all are good. Okay, now we'll proceed with the the few more things. I can say one last chunk that we are left with, the application, right, that we created. Now, all this while what we are discussing and what we should be quite clear about is that when we talk about RAP, it's not a way of generating a Fiori application. It can be consumed at n number of places, but the purpose of a RAP is to generate a OData endpoint. Now that OData endpoint, you can choose where to use and where you can, let's just say, use it for which whatever purpose. Okay. But in case we are saying we are consuming it into Fiori, how this particular Fiori application will be deployed, and when I deploy it finally on my BTP account on my Cloud Foundry environment, will it be able to trigger the backend call to my ABAP environment deployed services? That's something we are going to focus right now. So what I'll do is I could have, let's just say, deployed this directly, but rather we'll try to create an application from the scratch, because it's let's just say template based anyway. But we'll have a full flashback of like how we generated it earlier, and how it can be generated and deployed from end to end. Okay, I'll just, first thing we should do is we should open a terminal and ensure that my Cloud Foundry has been logged in, because Cloud Foundry is an environment, BTP environment, on which BTP runtime environment on which we are planning to deploy it. I'll just simply say CF login, and you will ultimately pass your credential. Okay, so finally, what it will give you is that on your account, you just logged in with this particular dev space. So it's saying that there is a particular account and it has got some dev space. Maybe if you would like to view, you can also go over here in the overview of your class, and here you will see the subdomain over here, and the dev space it is referring to is this one. So that's where it might try to deploy your application. Now we have logged in into Cloud Foundry. Now next purpose, or I can say next set of action, should be that we'll create a application. You can go in view command palette and you can search for Fiori application generator. Application generator. You see the first one onto the list. That's the one we'll select. Okay, and here we'll try to go with some sort of a list report, which, for example, I'll just go next, and here we'll start selecting the data source. Now the data source for us will be the service binding that we created. I'll just simply say connect to system. Here we'll connect to the system, which is nothing but your ABAP environment. Okay, so we have the ABAP environment linked to my same Cloud Foundry dev space. I'll just simply select this. Now, at this point, maybe this step and next step might take some time because system is trying to load certain things. Okay, meanwhile, it just prepares for some information. So, for example, we might need a project detail. So I'll just simply say uh, BTP UI wrap. So wrap based UI application. Okay, or let's just say if you would like to give it as a manage wrap, I'll just say manage travel app, and maybe we can. So these are the nothing but a project name and the description of it. Next thing we might also need is a semantic object. Whenever my application has been deployed onto a launchpad, what should be the identity of it? So for example, this particular application has been used for my travel management. So I'll just simply say travel with a manager app application. I'll just simply say action will be there. So for example, I'll just simply say manage. So managing the information of a travel. This manage does not stand for your app. And these two things can be anything random. Okay, I am just giving a random name over here. I'll just go over here. Okay, it's still loading. Okay, so services has just got started loading over here. We'll choose a service, the one which we created. So I'll just simply say that JF. We have, let's just say, travel over here. So I'll just simply select the travel. And I'll select next. Here it will ask you what is the main entity and what is the navigation. I'll just say we should navigate to the booking. I'll just simply also say next. Here we can have the name of the project that we defined. I'll just say this one. I can say manage travel. Description. I just give the same thing in the title and description. Okay, and it will say which version you would like to use. Anyway, we are on almost the top, so I'll use the one which is matching with my backend environment, but doesn't matter. You can also go with a latest version also if you want. I'll just add the deployment configuration, which will choose, or I can say, which will allow ask you to choose where you would like to deploy it, whether you would like to deploy it onto the Cloud Foundry or a BAP environment. As we are working on the BTP Cloud, I'll just go with a Cloud Foundry environment. Then you will have something called Fiori Launchpad configuration, by the means of which you will specify what should be the semantic object and the action using which your application can be uniquely identified and navigated. Simply go with next. Here, as I mentioned, there are two options. As we are working on BTP, we'll choose the Cloud Foundry. But many a time, if someone is working also on the RAP services on on-premise system, or let's just say would like to deploy directly the things onto a web environment, they can also go with ABAP and the destination onto which their system is connected. Now, if it's ABAP environment, this will be environment destination. Now, the destination, when I say, it's ultimately the destination, which you would see over here, the destination section. Or if there is an on-premise system, you can also find that SAP UFF ABAP repository. In technical terms, this is nothing but a BSP application. This BSP application is, I guess, those of you who would anyway have get some hands-on on the UI would know that BSP application is a kind of a compressed file which contains all the information of your UI application. So you can also choose this, and if you are trying to add it into some sort of a package, because BSP application is a transportable thing, you can add it, and you can also pass some sort of a transport request. As we are also going with here, you see there is the one ABAP cloud environment. Okay, now if I just go over here, I'll choose the other variant of it, which is called Cloud Foundry, which is going to deploy this application onto the cloud. This cloud deployment over here ultimately will choose the same thing, saying, okay, what is the destination from where my systems, let's just say, backend services are going to get served. I'll say it will be served via my ABAP environment. So there is a place where from where your service will be communicating, the backend will be communicating to the UI. Would you like to have a managed application router? Yes. So as you can see, if I just go in HTML5 applications, the applications are managed over here by means of managed application router, which manages how the internal calls between multiple parties, the client and server, are navigated. I'll just add application router. I'll just go next, and it will ask me for a semantic object and action. I'll just go over here and I'll say this one, and I'll just go over here and here. I'll just copy this. Okay, and I'll just also simply say this one, and here I'll just simply say, okay, I'll just specify draft v2. I'll just say finish. It will create a project over here. Like you see over here, it's installing the dependency. So we have already done this thing for this too as well. We followed the same step, but I do not want to directly go ahead and deploy, because that would be a very one or two steps remaining. But if you would like to know the earlier step, the one which we covered, you might have to go through the other video recording. So we just covered everything into the single one. So now we are on to the same stage where we started maybe. So we have got the Fiori application available. I'll just close this, and maybe if you would like, you can also preview the application, how it is looking like. So managed travel is getting loaded. Then I can see my application available over here with all the operations and everything that we defined. Now what I'll do is I'll close this, and now I'll proceed with the deployment. For that, the deployment artifact, the MTA, multi-target application, any YML file is responsible for that. So here I'll choose MTA YML. Just happen. see multiple things missing somehow. Ideally, it should have all these things that we are seeing over here. Maybe the generation has failed due to some reason, it seems. Okay, so here we have access app and access security and everything, but maybe during this particular step, some sort of a generation did not work the way expected. Ideally, I'm expecting empty YML to have all the modules, because when I say I'm communicating to my backend, my destination service should also be there. My UI repo should be there in this one, because this is ultimately being used to authenticate your user. Okay, this is what we were expecting. Maybe something just happened because of which my project does not have all the files. I'll just refresh this. Otherwise needed, maybe we'll create one more. We don't have those files. Somehow those did not got generated because of some reason. Okay, I'll delete this project once. Okay, Fury app generator. So each file has got some role to play. That's the one which was missing. That's a bit troublesome. That's the reason I just removed it. Because accessapp.json over here ideally helps you navigate from your backend to UI, this communication. You see the source and target navigation, because BTP is quite secure. If this is not there, your ultimately application won't be authenticated. At the same point in time, this help this being used to have your backend and UI communication where your backend destination has been connected. Okay. And based on your individual user, some role will be created, and the empty YML will contain all the services which are supposed to be deployed in the form of modules and resources. Somehow this was not there. It's strange, but let's see. Okay, I'll just go with this one.
Sumit, good morning.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Till it get deployed. So, can we have some projects which we can download and upload from you? I mean, in this, other than DMO legacy, if we can do something else also, if you have something which you can upload directly and see
I can
sample
give you a
projects.
problem state. I can give you a problem statement that you can try creating. Directly upload and download. No, maybe I guess that's something which is not there. But I can give
Okay.
you a problem statement which you can try implementing by the means of a wrap service.
Okay. So please, if you can, so that we can accept this DMO legacy, if you can create tables. I mean, I have created few tables. I mean, basic things, but if you can give a real time thing which can
Yeah,
work in this.
Yeah, I'll give you a problem statement of like what all things it should have and what is the expectation kind of end user requirement, and you can
Mm-hmm.
try creating those things from the scratch into the system and ensure that okay the BU and everything is working. Maybe a kind of real end user requirement. I can share a document with you maybe within a week
Please,
or so.
please. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And any way where we can download and upload the projects in this in while creating this template? I mean,
Which project and which template? That's what I'm willing to understand.
no,
First, when you
suppose already a app deployed. Okay, so can I
okay.
download the sort of a jar file and upload it here? Something like that.
On a Fury side, you can. Many a time, what happens is on Fury UI applications, people,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I'll just give you an idea here. You can download a particular project, for example, this one, and you can directly upload it into the other environment of the sub account where the same, for example, there is a UI service. It needs some backend to work. So if that backend is also available over there, it's deployed. You can simply download this UI and upload it over there, and you can see those things working because many these also one of the way of transporting a UI application. But when it comes
Correct,
to
because
backend,
in Wave ID we have done like that. I mean, when we were
yeah,
working in
you
Wave.
can, you can, yeah, that's also one of the valid way. But that's also only possible for UI, as in the backend,
UI, correct,
definitely.
correct, backend. Yes.
Let's see whether there is some issue with the BS or because we have anyway project that we can go ahead and deploy. But I just want to ensure that the steps that we are following, it's should generate a project right now. So maybe we are able to connect the dots easily.
Like in case Sumit, simple DMO uploads like BP creation screen, normal things. I mean, uh, where just we do our read entities and just check if it is something has failed and then keep it in the result. So those things can also be done like this, correct? I mean, Excel upload.
Excel upload is look when I say you are think okay from which perspective you are thinking from a Fury perspective or
Suppose I have a
a rep
DMO program. Suppose I need to upload a mass upload of BPs or mass upload of assets,
huh,
something like that. So in
you
that
can
case, normally you use upload programs, correct? So in that case, if that has to be converted, so I just create my consumption view and then do a read entity and just do, I mean, upload it using the BAPI within the method. So that,
yeah, but
I mean,
when you say upload,
yes.
what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to create a let's just say UI application, a file
Mm-hmm.
uploader control should be there, right?
Correct,
Because
correct. Hmm.
so a file uploader control will upload that file and then you can ultimately consume it onto the UI. Now that Fury can also help you, let's just say read that file and directly send you the content, or it can send you the content and you can read the Excel file by ABAP utilities, and then you can because ABAP.to XLSX and multiple utilities are there using which you can read those
Hmm.
Excel and post which you can upload it, which is nothing but a mass upload, right? So
Correct,
that's
correct.
also something which is doable for sure.
Hmm.
So all the use cases which were possible earlier are also possible right now. It's just a matter
Hmm.
of a fact that we should be knowing that which all the things we should be using in RAP in order for us to achieve that.
Because we are getting requisition to give us some POCs for multiple things, correct? Suppose a simple module pool or a simple upload or a direct interactive report. So those things, everything which are in the system, we are getting POCs so that we can sell them off and then we can just convert them. And they will give a requisition of, they will give a demand saying that this 15 things I need to convert. Okay, then we go and convert them into rap. So those things we are getting. So out of them, 2 or 3 uploads also they are asking to do. So that's why I
Yeah,
was
understood.
asking.
You can
Mhm.
definitely do that, achieve via RAP. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think we got this file generated. Now I have access app, access security. MTYML should also have got, yeah, it has now got this services, resources, and modules, right? So now what we can do is you can simply right click on this and build the project. Yeah. And going forward, this archive file that just got generated, the moment you let's just say build a project, archive file will get generated, and you can simply right click and deploy this one. So this will be deployed finally on your BTP environment. Okay, so process just got finished. Now I should be able to view that particular project here. As you can see, it just started. As it's an auto refresh, I can see that project here. I'll click on this and see if the my service and everything is connected correctly. I'll just go in network call. You see the dollar metadata call just got triggered, and here I should be able to see that my this particular service was invoked. It was 200. So ultimately, my system was able to read the service metadata using which my application can be loaded. So here we see the full travel information over here. The application that we were running locally is now available on a deployed BTP environment. Now, from an end user perspective, definitely I should not directly give them this link. Rather, I should give them, let's just say, some sort of a launchpad on which they can go ahead and use this as a tile. Okay, that's something which we can also do. So it is a final Fury application which we see over here. Okay, I'll just close this now. So we have this Fury application available. Now my purpose is that I should be able to put it in some sort of a launchpad. Uh, okay, so in that particular case, what you can do is you can simply go in the service marketplace if you don't have a launchpad. So for example, I have some launchpad which we have already created. So for example, SAP build workzone, there is also one type of your launchpad service. You can use this ultimately to have your application deployed, or I can say have your applications visible as a tile. Okay, so if you create an subscription for that, you will be able to view that them into the instances and subscription over here. As you can see in the subscription, I see SAP build workzone standard edition. Now, once it has been available, made available over here, you should also ensure that the user who is responsible for managing that has got the required rules. So if I just go into the users over here in the security section, I'll just, so for example, go over here and the role collection over here, you see the launchpad admin is a right which is required for you to administrate the launchpad, and external user is required to use that particular launchpad. Or I can say to access all those styles and everything, right? So what I'll do is I'll just go in my instances and subscription back, and I'll click on this SAP Build Work Zone Standard Edition. It will open the launchpad. It's called Site Manager. Now, what you there is a site. Okay, there is ultimately a site that you will see. Now, in order for you to derive, or I can say view the application that you created, what you'll do is you'll go over here in the Content Manager. Okay, and you will go into Content Explorer, and you can view the HTML5 applications. Here we see that, okay, we are only having one application which was deployed earlier. So in the third one, which is content channel, you will see that this particular thing was updated on 13 Jan, not later than that, right? So I'll just have to refresh so my application starts appearing over here. I'll just say update content. So this process varies from the varies from launchpad to launchpad. So for example, here it is build work soon. Later, maybe the place where you are working on, maybe some different launchpad will be there. Is anyway admin activity. As a developer, we should be mainly focusing on how backend service can be created, UI service can consume it, and can be deployed. Okay, later the configuration of it is a admin person's responsibility, but at least we should be knowing how it works. So we have that particular end-to-end knowledge. Okay, so now it just got updated. I'll just go over here. Okay, now this manage assessment, right? I'll just say Content Explorer, HTML5 application. Now I see a application appearing. So I'll just simply say manage travel over here, and I'll just add this. Okay, so my managed travel also got added to the content which is available. Okay. Now in this particular one, managed travel over here, as you can see, this particular application is available in my content manager. Finally, like I have a particular, let's just say this particular group created, okay, called cap application, where I have deployed a cap application. Same way, if you like, you can also create one more group, and you can say wrap application, and I'll just assign managed travel to that. For example, I'll just simply say save. Go in Content Explorer, okay, and this wrap application over here is visible. At the same point in time, everyone over here has been able to see this. I would like managed travel also to be visible, so I'll just simply say save. You can also create one more role and say if this particular role which my user is having, then only this should be visible. That's also something you can do. Okay, now I'll just go over here in my main site directory. Here you see there is something called site. If I just click on the setting, you will be inside over here, and you will see that this particular site over here is responsible for showing all this particular let's just say application in the form of a site. Okay, so by default it will have a role everyone. In case you would like to have a role based let's just say differentiation of what application should be visible, you can also define a role and assign over here. So currently by default it will be everyone, so I have not assigned any role to it. And as you can see, the path of it says this one, because here we have done one thing. We have managed site alias and we are calling it dev. Okay, if you don't have an alias, the system's name will be a bit different. Okay, so for example, I'll just simply click on this, and I see that okay, I have a same launchpad where some cap applications are deployed, some web applications are deployed, and you see that here the travel m managed, right? The one which we gave over here in the form of a semantic object and action. That's something which is visible over here, and my application is working right now. As you would have seen, the moment I opened this, the endpoint of this was there. Okay, because we gave the site alias. If you do not have the site alias, then the issue, or I can say the readability of this might be a bit different. So for example, if I click on this, you'll get a random site ID from where your application can be redirected. But many a time it helps if you do have a readable site ID, so that you can easily identify that okay, this particular launchpad was meant for dev or relevant environment, you can name it. So you can always manage the site alias, and you can give one, and I'll just say save. So your URL also will get changed. This is not relevant to wrap. This is something which is relevant to the build work zone launchpad management. Okay, but the idea is even from this let's just say build work zone launchpad, your final rep service is being invoked, and now you are able to also see the things that you ultimately created. So for example, if I just go over here and view, try to go in edit, we see the logic that we have written to have these things also available over here as a read only. That's something which is also quite visible. And any things that you change, right? So for example, if I'll say that the moment someone says my status has been approved, I do not want anyone to go ahead and edit that particular status, right? So this particular status over here, which is currently in an editable mode, I want it to be in a read-only mode. Do I need some sort of a separate Fiori application creation and re-uploading, or I can say redeployment of it? Not really, right? So for example, what I'll do is I'll just simply say this overall status over here. I'll copy this and I'll make it again a feature instance. Okay, and I'll just simply save this, activate this. So this becomes my feature instance one. Now if I just go over here in my get instance feature, in this field one, I expect that this field overall status should also start appearing. You see, in this result, I also see the overall status now. I can see that, okay, if I have an overall status over here, this particular field should be disabled if let's just say a travel has been approved. I'll just activate this. So this particular service is now activated. Its service binding and everything would have got auto adjusted. The same has been let's just say consumed in a Fury. and the application is also deployed. So now if I just simply refresh and try editing this, let's see, without us redeploying anything, I should be able to see the behavior, right? So we see this particular status has been made read only. This all is happening because ultimately we have the application endpoint connected to a destination which is dynamically being queried rather than a static one. Okay, that's how it works. Anyone has any doubts, any questions on this?
Sumit, the alias we defined, uh,
Uh-huh.
so that we can segregate between systems. Suppose it is dev or quality.
Uh-huh,
But
uh-huh.
does it have a dependency on the architecture of the system? Like when you used to deploy in Fury, we used to have like if it is central hub, we have to define the particular alias, and if it is embedded, we used to define local. So does it have
No,
a
but
relation
that's
with?
so that
Yeah,
embedded and centralized, you the rules that you used to follow were let's just say specific to the let's just say project, or let's just say the team that you are
correct,
working on.
correct.
Technically, there are no limitations. If you would have defined the aliases other way around, there won't be any issue. But why in any project those rules are applied, so that by looking at it, certain project terminology are quite clear. You are not supposed to go ahead and look saying whether there is a local launchpad, or let's just say whether there is a local testing for which I have created, or there is a central deployed one which I am using. So those rules you
Okay,
can simply apply over here as well. No
okay.
restrictions on that. But idea is that when you are over here on your particular let's just say sub account, and you have this particular launchpad, the idea is that you are working on particular environment, and it makes sense if I the moment this URL is created and I'm handing it over to my end user, he also should be able
Mhm.
to make out certain thing by looking at this URL. If I am creating it onto the other environment, this particular alias change will help them understand rather than some
Correct, correct.
random hypothetical hexadecimal key, right? So there are no rules on the
Mhm.
name. You can have it anything.
Mhm. But normally, when you do a maintain service in Odita,
Uh-huh.
at that point of time, we generally, I mean, I have worked on
That's a
Central Hub
different
as
one.
well as. Correct.
That's
That's
different.
what I'm asking. There is no relation with this one. Correct.
No, 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 no. That's a system alias. That's the one that you're talking about, right?
Correct. 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 Correct.
Now, this system
System.
alias is what? So, for example, I understood your question. Now, you are saying there are two kind of deployment: embedded one
Correct.
and
Embedded and Central Hub. Central Hub.
yeah,
Yeah.
central hub, right? So, in this embedded
Yes.
one, what happens is that technically you have your backend
Front end and
and
back end in the same
Fiori
system.
in the
Yes.
same system, right? And as it's in the
Correct.
same system, you do
Mm,
not need a
need
RFC
to.
connection.
Correct. So it's alias. Local.
Yeah, yeah, RFC connection, which ultimately you are seeing in the IWFND main service in the form of a
Correct.
system alias, right?
Correct.
But when
Correct.
it's this one central hub, you are ultimately having your backend in
Bound to have
the
RFC with the front end. Yes.
yeah, there is also Fury. So, but point is that the moment you deploy this, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
on-premise system as well, this is ultimately going to give you only a service endpoint. It does not have
Correct.
anything to do with your Fury application at end of the day. So
No.
tomorrow, let's just say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now we understood RAF from a cloud perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now in this cloud, we understood that, okay, we are deploying the application on Cloud Foundry and we are able to use it. Now, it's also possible that I can create a RAP application on my S4HANA version to, let's just say 2022 or later than that, right? So here,
Mm-hmm.
if I am creating a service, now here I can also have two approaches. Either I can have a single system on which my service are being deployed. It's an embedded one. Or I can
Mm-hmm.
also have separate gateway system, right? Now, if I have a separate gateway system, definitely I would like my backend system to be connected, then also system alias will come into picture. But
Correct.
if you do that, the system that you will connect to, okay, over here in my BS, while creating a
Mhm.
Fury project, what you connected to? You connected to a system called ABAP environment. Rather,
Correct.
what you will
Mm.
connect to is you will connect to a separate destination, because here the destination over here will be again connected to your backend system. For example, I'll just give you an idea. These are on-premise system. Okay, there is an
Mm.
on-premise system in which if there is some service going forward, my expectation will be that I should be able to connect over here. Maybe
Mm.
I'm okay. Let's just say I'm not sure whether that destination is still up, but let's just say I'll just give you one idea. Um, view command palette. This one. These are on-premise scenario. Pretty much understand. So this particular service, which are defined on a relevant environment, you would like to connect to it. I'll just simply say let's report over here.
We are still on Neo. We are it's not in CF.
But I guess the concepts are same.
Concepts are same.
Neo is anyway going to get obsolete, right? I mean, it's
Yes, yes, yes. They're
the
not
bet.
yet migrated, so they're planning, you know.
Yeah, the better you migrate earlier would be better for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I guess it's not connected to this one. So otherwise, what would happen is the moment you say connect to system, you would be able to see like you see over here, right? So this
Correct.
particular things are
Mm-hmm.
something. It's quite some time since I ultimately connected and this cloud connectors and everything. So once you have those connections established, you will also see the backend system information over here. And this backend system information, for example, you say on-premise service. Now, what is something that you will connect to if it's embedded, and what is something you will connect to if it's a central hub. So, for example, I'll just say it's for S4 HANA embedded, and this is for
Mm-hmm.
S4 HANA central hub. So, if
Mm-hmm.
you are having just an embedded environment on which your system service and Fury is there, the moment you create a Fury application, there is a destination that you will connect to, and finally you will have your service visible. But in case it's a central hub, even though your service was developed and let's just say published over here, but while connecting to it, you will always go by the system alias, and while creating a Fury application, you will always connect to the central hub, like you do in a normal non-wrap services as well. That's what you ideally do in gateway as well. Okay,
Correct,
that's the
correct.
same. That's the same approach that will be applicable over here as well. Okay,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
that alias does not have anything to do with the build work zone alias because that is specific to UI.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I guess that's all we had. Anyone still have anything to discuss, any doubts, any queries? Definitely, we'll have the WhatsApp group and everything. So, in case you guys have any doubts while you are working on something, or let's just say there is something that you guys are trying out and you would like to share it with the group, feel free. Maybe I'll be happy to learn. For that one, the one which we are discussing, I'll just try to share, prepare, or let's just say a couple of page of